Okay, so it's 4 o'clock Eastern time. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Mike. Welcome to Pear Deck 101 for PowerPoint. Today we'll be walking through some of the basic functionalities of Pear Deck and how it works with PowerPoint online. Just a quick kind of overview of how this will run today. We'll learn how to start an account, how to log in, what your homepage is going to look like, and then we'll go through what it's going to look like when we build a Pear Deck lesson. We'll also explore student and teacher views through a presentation. We'll also explore that student-paced asynchronous mode as well. And then we'll end with a Q&A. We'll look at some of the resources available. And then there is also a brief survey that's going to help us as we sort of generate new webinars or kind of hone and update an existing webinar. So I'd also really appreciate if everyone will do that. There'll be a slide for that at the end. There will also be a slide near the end for questions as well. So when we get to that slide, it'll be an interactive slide. You guys will be able to type your questions in there, and then I'll be able to project them so everyone will see those questions as well. But before we get started, I just want to quickly kind of talk about what Pear Deck is. So Pear Deck is built for educators by educators, relying on the most up-to-date learning or education research available, showing that engagement is a great means to reduce the achievement gap and increase chances of success for our students both in the classroom and out. We're going to do this by building interactive presentations using either PowerPoint or Google Slides in order to increase active participation, soft skill acquisition, so critical thinking, social emotional learning, analytical skills, things that aren't necessarily content specific, but are useful outside of the classroom as well. We're also looking to increase inclusivity to create an equitable educational environment in which everyone feels comfortable to participate. Which will ultimately help to improve school culture, increase student success, and decrease that achievement gap. One of the great things about Pear Deck, and one of the things that sort of drew me to it initially, I was a classroom teacher up through this past spring before joining Pear Deck in the fall. And I had very large class sizes with limited resources and limited paraprofessional help. So having large classes of varying student levels, as well as my English language learners, it was really hard to get everyone participating and engaged when it came to differentiating, scaffolding, and meeting each student where they needed to be met. You always have students who don't necessarily feel comfortable raising a hand, participating in discussion, asking a question. This is going to provide us an opportunity to have those students participate and engage in a way that's comfortable for them and in a way that the spotlight won't necessarily be on them. And I will show you in the presentation mode how we can spotlight answers, but anonymously without actually drawing attention to specific students. But before we get started with building slides, I want to quickly go to peardeck.com and just walk us through what that page is going to look like and what it's going to look like when we are actually creating our account. So if you go to peardeck.com, you're looking for this teacher login button, the top right corner of your screen. So if I go ahead and I click that, it's going to take me right in because I was logged in previously, but I'll go ahead and sign out quickly. So you're going to see a page that looks like this. And then we want to make sure if we're using PowerPoint, we want to log in with Microsoft. Same thing with Google Slides. If we're going to use Google Slides, we want to log in with Google. But I'll just click this login with Microsoft button. If I'm already logged in to a Microsoft account that's affiliated with a Google or with a Pear Deck account, it'll go ahead and take me straight to my homepage. But if I didn't, it's going to take me to a screen where it's going to ask me to enter some pertinent information. Once I get through that, it's going to take me to this homepage. There are a few options on this homepage when it comes to presenting. We'll look at those settings when we get closer to presenting. But the first thing I want to draw our attention to is this kind of large center screen here. So if we click create a presentation, it's going to open up a new PowerPoint presentation for us. The first thing you'll notice is it'll give you a pre-made slide that's going to just provide some information in helping you to get started. The first thing that I want to do prior to creating my lesson is I do want to open my Pear Deck add-in for Microsoft. If I don't have that, I need to go ahead and get that. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to go ahead over to insert and all the way over to the far right to where it says more options. And I'm looking for add-ins. You may see it in this menu at the top here, but if not, just click this 3 dots here and it'll drop down that menu and you can find those add-ins. So I'll go ahead and open that. I'm going to be searching for the Pear Deck add-in. So if I have it available to me like I do here, it'll go ahead and show up. But otherwise, I'm going to want to search for it. I don't know why. There we go. We'll go to store and we'll search. And you're just going to click add and you'll add that add-in. Once that's added, all I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to home, which is the second one in from the left at the top of this toolbar. I'm going to go all the way over to the right to this 3 dots, that more options button again. And I'm going to go all the way down and I'm going to click on Pear Deck. Now you'll see the toolbar will open for me and I have a few options there. So when I'm done creating my presentation and I'm ready to present, I want to make sure that I'm not presenting through PowerPoint, but I'm presenting through Pear Deck. So if I were to click the PowerPoint present button, I'll look and be able to see all my slides, but they won't be interactive for my students. So I want to make sure that I'm clicking this green present button or that I'm presenting from the Pear Deck homepage, which I'll also show you as well. You'll also see we have a template library available. So if you don't want to create slides from scratch, you can go ahead and grab some templates that we have available. You're free to edit them. They're fully editable, and I'll show us how to get them in just a second. And then if you scroll down, you'll see we also have some of those soft skill based slides or templates. We have critical thinking templates and social emotional learning templates. And then we have our question types. So our question types are going to be what's going to make our slides interactive. So we have text, which is going to be more for our open-ended questions. It's going to allow students to type an answer. We have our choice slide type, which is going to allow students to pick an option, and we can use that for true, false, agree, disagree. We can use it for multiple choice. We can also use it for polling. We have a number slide, which is much like the text slide in that it's going to provide students with a box to type in, and they'll just be able to type numerals into that box to answer equations. We have our website slide type, which allows us to embed an outside website directly into our presentation so that our students aren't jumping around from screen to screen. They can go ahead and actually interact with a website while staying within your presentation. They'll also be able to watch videos as well, and I will show us that. Our last 2 slide types, and these are going to be specific to premium subscribers, are going to be our draw slide type and our draggable slide type. So our draw slide type is going to provide any sort of imagery, anything that you put on your slide is going to kind of flatten into a background image and be a canvas for your students. They'll have a pencil tool. They can add text. They'll have a line tool. They can highlight. So it's a pretty versatile slide, and there's a ton of applications for it. And again, we will discuss that as we're building our slides. And finally, we have our draggables. So our draggable slide, much like the draw slide, is going to just provide you the opportunity to have anything you put on that slide flatten as a background image. And you're going to have draggable items that your students are going to be able to drag to specific points on that slide. So once again, we will see that in action as I go ahead and I build my slides. If I wanted to build slides from scratch, I could just go ahead, insert a new slide. And this is going to be a more open-ended question. Now, at this point, I can go ahead, I can add any images I want. I can do what I would normally do when I'm building slides. But when I'm ready to make it interactive, I'm going to go ahead over, and because this is an open-ended question, I'm going to click text. You'll see that an interactive bar is going to populate at the bottom of the slide. We want to make sure that we don't delete that we keep that there. That's what's going to allow your students to interact with the slide. So we want to make sure that we leave that as is. For our students to be able to interact. If we wanted to make this a non-interactive slide for whatever reason, we can just go ahead and delete that object, and it's going to go back to being just a regular slide. Now, when it comes to templates, I just want to show you there's a little bit of like a nuance as far as actually being able to utilize these templates. So if I go ahead and I click on this template library, it's going to take me to our Pear Deck template page, which exists in our orchard. If you're trying to get there, you're going to go to teaching resources from that Pear Deck main page when you go to peardeck.com, and you're going to go to explore content. It's going to take you to our orchard, which is going to have a couple of things available to you. We'll discuss these more in depth when we look at our resources. But for our templates, I'll go ahead, I'll click see all templates. We have various templates available. We have our beginning of the class templates, which are more of like our bell ringers. We have templates that are content specific. We have templates for just adding assessments or check-ins. And then we also have like our end of the lesson templates, which are going to be more for like our reflections or our exit tickets. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pick a template that we want to use. And we can go ahead and we can actually preview these just by clicking these arrows just to see what kind of templates we're going to be getting. But when I'm ready, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make sure that I click PowerPoint. It's going to open it in a separate PowerPoint presentation, but we're not quite finished yet. Because of the integration with Microsoft and how it works, we actually need to download these slides and then re-upload them to our PowerPoint online in order to be able to use them. So all we're going to do is we're going to go to File. We'll go to Download As, and I'm going to download a copy. We don't want to open it in the desktop version of PowerPoint because Pear Deck doesn't have an integration with the desktop version, only with online. So if I were to open it on my desktop, I'm actually not going to be able to drag those slides to an online presentation. It'll just drag them as like sort of an image. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and go to PowerPoint. And once we're in PowerPoint, I'm going to go down to where it says upload and open. I'll click that. And I'm just going to upload that template. Now that this is uploaded and these slides are now yours, you can go ahead and pick whatever slides that you want to use. We can go ahead and we can grab them just by using Command or Control C or V if we want to cut, or if we, or sorry, Control X if we want to cut, Control C if we want to copy, Command if it's a Mac. And then going back to my presentation, I'm just going to use Command or Control V to paste it. And now that pre-made slide is available to me. Now, if for whatever reason I want to edit anything on this slide, if I want to make it more specific to my particular class, if I want to change some of the images, change the background, even change the question type, they are fully editable. So I can go in and I can do whatever it is that I need to do prior to actually using this slide. So we can use those templates as is. We can edit them. We can also make a slide from scratch. But I know from my time as a teacher that we spend a lot of time lesson planning. We spend a lot of time grading. We don't necessarily always want to reinvent the wheel. So if you have a slideshow that you've used in the past that you'd like to use and you want to make interactive, you can certainly do that as well. All you'd need to do is open that slideshow up and then go through and add those question types. So that's what we're going to kind of do as I go through and show you what each question type looks like as we are adding it to a lesson. So if I had opened up this slideshow, this was a slideshow that I used in the past, and now I want to make it interactive. I'll go ahead and go to my home and go to the more options, 3 dots, and open up my Pear Deck add-in. Once the toolbar is up, I'm going to go through. I may need to edit some slides if I've previously used them just to make them make more sense for my students so they'll understand what they're going to be doing activity-wise. But we'll see that this first slide, it's an open-ended question. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to click that text slide again. It'll go ahead and give me that bar at the bottom. Now I know my students are going to be able to interact. Our second question type is going to be our choice type. So this is going to be a question where I'm asking my students to choose and let me know what their experience is with Pear Deck. So I'll click choice. You'll see I have various options. I can go ahead. I can add options if I'd like. I can also go all the way down to 2 if I wanted to do an agree, disagree, or if I wanted to do a true or false. And actually we can go and we can edit that. We can go ahead and make that sort of template if we'd like. So again, we'll click choice. I'll subtract that option. So I just have 2. And then I'll make this an agree, disagree question. And then I'll just click update slide when I'm ready. And it's going to update that. It'll also let me know below it in a little bit of like a text box what my multiple choice options are. And it's going to also give me sort of a prompt as to what I want to do if I want to edit that question. Our next slide type is going to be our number slide type. Like I said before, it's going to be a lot like our text slide type in that I'm just going to click this number button. It's going to give me that interactive bar at the bottom. And then my students will have a box on the right-hand side of their screen that they'll be able to type the answer in. Now, our fourth slide type is going to be our website slide type. And this is going to give us the option to embed an outside entity in. So if I go to Pear Deck and I want to look at what websites I can actually embed, I'll go ahead and embed that there. So if I went to peardeck.com, make it a little bit quicker. And I just copy the URL or the address from that address bar. In my slides, I want to go ahead and click this website button. And then I'm just going to paste that URL right into this preview box here. Now you'll see that it gives me a fully interactive preview. I know that if I can interact with this website, my students are also going to be able to. So all I'm going to do is click update slide at this point. You'll see in the interactive bar at the bottom, it's also going to give a link to that website. So if students do need to leave the session to open that for whatever reason, they can go ahead and click that. That link will take them directly to that site. Now, some websites are going to be that easy to embed. We'll just go ahead, we'll grab that URL or that address in the address bar and paste it right in. But other websites, YouTube, for example, Edpuzzle, some of the other ones, they're going to need a specific embeddable link, and I'll show you how to grab that. So if we wanted to add a YouTube video to our slides, we'll go ahead to youtube.com. And we'll look up a TED Talk. So if I were to do what I had just done and just grab this URL from the top here and go ahead and click on that website button again and just paste that address, it's going to tell me that YouTube is refusing to connect. So we want to go ahead and we want to look for an embeddable code. So usually we're going to look for a share button or we're going to look for a button that says embed. So for YouTube, we'll go right under the video next to the I like this or I don't like this button. And we're going to click share. And we're going to click embed. Now it'll give you a full embeddable code. We don't want to grab that whole code. We're just looking for that specific web address. So if you see where it starts with this HTTPS through the end of that address in between those quotation marks, that's all we're looking to grab. So I'll go ahead and select it. And sometimes when I share my screen, it doesn't let me just select that. It makes me select the whole code. If that's the case, I'll go ahead, I'll copy it. I'll paste it. You'll see it won't work because I don't have just the specific address that it needs. So I'll go ahead and erase what's around it. Including those quotation marks. And now I'll get a preview of the video that I can interact with. And now I know that my students will be able to watch this video as well. I'll click update slide and it's going to update. And now my students will be able to asynchronously control this video from their screens. So if we wanted to, we can put guided questions or notes or something that we want our students to look at on our slide here because they'll still have access to that on the left-hand side of their screen. And they can go ahead and take those notes in their notebook while they're pausing and watching that video at their own pace. Our two last question types are our draw and our draggable. So for the draw question type, it's going to generate just like the text and the number. And that I don't really have any options. I'm just going to click draw. It's going to provide me with that interactive bar. And now my students are going to be able to use that as a canvas. So if I want them to decorate a name tag, for example, on the first day of school, I can go ahead and use it for that. But there are other applications. We can use this. We can put a graphic organizer in here. We can do graphing. We can plot points, any kind of word web, brainstorming, and we can do any sort of like art project, anything like that. It's a pretty versatile slide. And again, we'll see that as we present. The last question type is going to be our draggable question type. So I'm going to click on draggable. And I'm going to have a few options. So what I can do is I can get up to 5 draggable items. We have 8 colors to choose from. And we do have various symbols as well. So additionally, I can make the item as large or as small as I want to. This is kind of useful if we're working with like our younger students or students who don't necessarily have a ton of technical experience working with a mouse or a trackpad. We can make it very large, a little bit easier to find and grab. We can also make it very small. And then just some of the symbols we have available to us. We have just some generic symbols here and here. These are more of like our shape-based symbols, and then we just have some basic symbols. Then we have some math equation symbols. So you could put in a math equation and have students complete it by dragging the proper symbol. We have numerals available. And we also have punctuation. So again, we could have students complete a sentence. These are also symbols that they'll see typically on a keyboard. So if we are doing some technical practice, we can have them work with these as well. But once I've decided on my symbol, I'll go ahead and choose it. And I'm going to click Update Slide. And now students will have that symbol available to them. But it looks like I have 4 here. I only picked 1, so I'll go back and fix that. So we'll add 4. Make sure we're staying in line with the legend. Okay. And if we want to create a legend, all we need to do is right click on any of these symbols, copy the image, and just paste it onto our slide. And then we can use that to create a legend. And again, once we're done, we'll click Update Slide. And now my students are going to have those draggable items on the right-hand side of their screen. They'll be able to drag it to designated points. And that's pretty much it as far as actually creating our slides is concerned. What we're going to do now is I'm going to show you some of the things available on our homepage prior to getting into an actual session. And then we'll go ahead, we'll explore that teacher view, student pace mode. We'll look at our teacher dashboard as well. But prior to that, we'll go back to our homepage. And I'm looking up to where my email address is here. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to click my account. And I'm going to click on settings. So I have a few settings available to me. I can get a quick mood aggregate of my students, as well as get feedback after the lesson by turning on Classroom Climate. It's going to give students the ability to provide me with their mood entering a lesson so that I know if I may need to check in with a specific student or two, or if there's certain mood that pervades the class and I may need to adjust my lesson just to meet that. And then at the end of class, students can provide feedback. They can let you know how they felt about the lesson with a thumbs up or a thumbs down. That way we know whether we need to revisit a concept with the whole class, if we can do some small group work or some independent work in helping students to catch up with that concept, or if we just need to move on. We also have an immersive reader. In the interest of making our slides as accessible as possible, the immersive reader is going to give students multiple options. We'll look at that from the student view, but it's going to allow them to translate, listen to audio. They'll be able to break text on a slide into syllables, highlight parts of speech, and there are different applications as well. So we'll look at that when we get into that. Lastly, if we want to make sure we can see student names in the teacher dashboard in order to give feedback and to know which student provided which response, we want to make sure that we turn student logins on. We want to make sure that they're logging in with Microsoft if we're using PowerPoint, or a Google address if we're using Google Slides. But if you have this off, they'll anonymously join, and they'll join with a randomly assigned avatar nickname. Answers are always be projected anonymously, but if we want to see those names in our teacher dashboard, we want to make sure that we have this on. Additionally, if I want to look at any sessions that I've presented in the past, so what we built here is going to be our slide deck. And then our session is going to be what we're actually presenting. So we can present the same deck over and over again in various sessions, depending on our classes. So we don't have to present the same session to every class. But any session that we've presented is going to be available in our sessions list. So these are going to be the most recent presentations. And I can go through, you'll see that they're all closed, but I have the option to open my teacher dashboard, which is this middle button here, so that I can go ahead and review responses. If I went ahead and did that, I provided feedback to my students and I want to let them go back in, I can go ahead and click this more actions button and I can reopen my session. I can also name it from here or archive it, which is just going to hide it so that the list isn't so muddied. But I'll click reopen session. Now I can open that projector if I want to show responses. I can also click this more actions button again, and I can turn it directly to student pace mode from here and allow my students to join asynchronously, and they can work on it independently, whether it be at home for homework or whether we're doing independent work in class. And when we're done, I can always just either turn off student pace mode to show those answers, or I can just end that session. If we scroll down, you'll also see that you have a present a file from OneDrive menu. We can open our OneDrive directly from here or from the end of this list, but it's just going to show me the most recent presentations that I've worked with within Pear Deck. So if I click on one, you'll see that it's going to give me a smaller session menu that's only going to have the sessions that I've presented with this specific slide deck. I can start a student pace mode or a live session from here, and we can always flip flop while we're within a lesson. I can view this in OneDrive, or I can click edit, which would just take me back to my PowerPoint slideshow. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to start a live lesson. Again, we can do it from our PowerPoint. We can just click present with Pear Deck, or I can go ahead and I can start from my home. So I'll click start live session. The first screen that we'll get is going to be our join code. So this is going to be where our students are actually going to join our session. So we'll go to joinpd.com and I'll bring that join code right back up. And students are going to be able to go to joinpd.com. They'll be able to join. Feel free to join the session if you'd like. You'll be able to explore a little bit and kind of see what the students are seeing. I'll jump back and forth from screen to screen as well. And then on this specific box as well, you can provide students a link. So the join code will eventually expire after about a week. So if we want our students to do some extended work, or we want them to be able to go back and review at a later date, we want to make sure we're providing them with a join link, because that link is always going to be associated with this particular session. We can also open our teacher dashboard from here. So I'll go ahead and just left click, and you'll see that it'll copy that link to my clipboard. And I'm just going to post it in our chat. Students will be able to click it at that point, and they'll be able to enter directly. When I'm ready to begin class, I'll go ahead and click start class. And you'll see at the top right, that join code will stay available for me, and I can always click it to reopen it and enlarge it. You'll also see that I don't have a ton of options because this isn't an interactive slide right now, but I can look at my deck so I can jump to different slides out of sequence. I can navigate with my arrows here. This green dot is going to let me know I'm presenting along with the words presenting. And then we also have the ability to drop a new prompt in. So we can't necessarily edit a Pear Deck presentation while we're presenting and then have those edits actually directly go into that session. We'd have to restart a new session with it. But if we want to, I can click new prompt. And I have some options available where I can drop a pre-made slide directly into my presentation. We have some more generic slides. And then any slide I'm currently on, I can also make it interactive just by clicking one of these. I also can click this more actions button. I can turn on student pace mode at any time, end my session. I can open up my dashboard in a new tab, a new window, make it full screen. So I do have those available to me. Now, as the student, when I first enter a session, it's going to go ahead and give me this sort of mood check-in, so I can give my teacher an opportunity to see how I'm feeling today. And then once I've clicked that, it's going to take me in. Once I'm in the presentation, you'll see I don't have a lot available to me as the student initially. We're in a synchronous session, so I don't have any navigation tools, and this isn't an interactive slide. What I do have available to me right now is my immersive reader. So if I go ahead and I click immersive reader, you'll see that it breaks down the slide and simplifies it just into the text that's available. Now I have the opportunity to listen to audio. I can go ahead and change that audio. I have a few options there. I can click text preferences and I can change the size of my text. I have some font options. I can increase spacing. I have some color theme options as well. I have grammar options. I can break it into syllables. I can highlight parts of speech and change the color of those parts of speech if I'd like. I can have a line focus, so I can read line by line. I can also choose a language to translate it to. Additionally, if I click on specific words, it's going to give me a picture. It's going to allow me to listen to the audio for just that word. So again, we're just trying to make our slides as accessible as possible to make sure that our lessons are as inclusive as they could possibly be. So we'll go ahead and we'll head over to our first interactive slide. You'll see immediately as the teacher, I now have the ability to show responses. When I show responses, you'll see if I click, my student screen doesn't change. So it's important to remember that you're not projecting all of your class's responses to student screens. If you can imagine, this is going to be the screen that we're using if we were projecting to an all-in-one, using a projector, using a smartboard, or if we were on like a Zoom call and we're sharing like I'm with you. This is going to be my projector screen. This is where I'm showing my actual slideshow. My student view is going to remain as is. I'm not going to go ahead and get those responses projected to me. I also have the ability to lock screens at any point. If I hold in the left button on this lock screen button, I have the option of a 30-second, 1 minute, or 3-minute timer. If I just release, the timer is going to go ahead and populate. You'll see it start to count down. If you run your mouse over it, it's going to run away so that it doesn't get in the way. As the student, I'll see that it's going to populate at the top here. And again, it's going to run away from my mouse so as not to get in the way. Go ahead and type our student answer. Now, when this timer runs down, it's going to go ahead and automatically lock the screen. But at any time, I can just left click and it's going to lock it automatically. And the students are going to see their current answer and the fact that the teacher has locked responses and they're no longer allowed to respond. Again, from the student point of view, we'll see we have that text box available to us. We can type our response. We can add another response as well. What I'm going to do, just so we can go through and look at each question type, is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put it in student pace mode. So I'll click student pace mode from that more actions menu. It's going to let me know my students are in student pace mode. I'll see that blue dot as well. Now you'll see I have the option to show responses, but I don't have the option to lock screens at this point. I do have the option to stop student pace mode, and I'll show you what that looks like once I go through these slides. So our next slide is going to be our choice slide. So this was our agree, disagree. You're just going to choose your option. After that, we'll have our number slide. Just like the text slide, we have a box. We're just only going to be able to type numerals. Now, here's our first embedded website. So you'll see that on the left-hand side, I still do have my teacher's slide, but on the right-hand side, I have this website that I can interact directly with as a student. And if I were to click this link down here, it's going to take me to that website. The same would go for videos. So here we have our video. I can go ahead and watch this video. I can pause it. I can mute it. I can also see my teacher's slides. So if I have any guided notes or questions to take in my notebook while I watch, I can go ahead and do that. Now we have our draw slide. So our draw slide is going to be where we're going to be able to make use of these tools, and everything is just a canvas, any images or anything that we've added to this slide. So we'll go ahead and we'll add some text. I can change the size of that text as well. I can also adjust the color. We have a pencil tool, and again, I can change the size of that as well. Do a very poorly drawn pear for you. We have our highlighter tool. So if we wanted to, we could add text as the background of this slide. We could have our students also practice annotation. We have our align tool. And we can always erase, we can undo, we can clear the whole canvas, and it's just going to clear whatever we've put on that canvas. And lastly, we have our draggable slides. So you'll see those draggable items are going to show up on the right-hand side. And now all I'm going to do is left click, hold down, and just drag those items to their designated places and just release. So now as the student, I've gone through, I've completed all my questions. As the teacher, I'm now ready to show responses. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to click Stop Student Paste. So rather than asking students to go back to a specific slide and having to walk through kind of refocusing, I can instead just click Stop Student Paste at any time. And it's going to take students directly back to the slide that I'm on. And then it becomes a synchronous lesson once again. Now at this point, I can go ahead and show responses. If I click Show Responses, you'll see that they're all going to show anonymously. And you'll also see that I'm showing them here, but again, they're not going to go to my student screens. We can look at these in a list mode. We can also look at these in a grid mode. I like the grid mode for the text questions because if we're doing some sort of activity where we're like brainstorming, when I was in class, I would always have students put like a sticky note on the board. Even if we're in class now, I know we're not being super collaborative because of social distancing. This is kind of going to give us the ability to do that. It also gives us a good snapshot of all of our student answers. And I'll show you what it's going to look like in our teacher dashboard in just a few minutes. Our next slide was going to be our choice slide. I'll show responses for that. And you'll see that I have two modes. I can look at it in a grid or I can look at an overlaid layout. And the overlaid layout, when I was talking before about using this for like polling, for example, it's going to allow our students to see which students chose or how many students chose which option. So it's going to give us, again, just like a quick snapshot of all of our student responses. And if we were doing some sort of polling, it's going to be a really effective visual tool for us. Our number slide type, when I show responses, we do have an overlaid layout as well. We also have that grid. And the overlaid layout is going to show us a number line. That number line is going to expand or shrink based on our largest and smallest answers. And it's going to show all of our student answers on sort of like a spectrum and give us, again, just that quick snapshot. Now you'll notice for our embedded, our website slides, we're actually not able to show responses because we are taking an outside entity and embedding it into our interactive lesson. There's nothing that we're going to be able to show because they're not specific question types. So again, we're not going to be able to show responses when we get to those website slides. We have our draw slide. When we show responses for that, we have our list mode where we can see everything quite large. We can go through each one by one. We can get a quick snapshot in a grid layout. We also have an overlaid layout. The overlaid layout isn't going to be super useful for certain applications, but it's also going to be useful for other ones. So if we were doing graphing or if we were working with our younger students and we're tracing, or in art class, if we want to assign each student like a different portion of the canvas, we can go ahead and have them do that. And we'll see everything overlaid on top of one another. So again, there are applications for viewing it. When we're doing something basic like this, it may not be the best application to look at, but it is applicable. And I think it works really great for like when we are doing some sort of graphing exercise. And lastly, we have our draggable. So when I show responses for that, You'll see I do have that overlaid layout once again. I can see where all of my students dropped those items. I can also look at it in a grid, and I can also look at it in a list as well. So now that I've shown you how it's going to look through the projector, again, always anonymous, I'm going to show you that teacher dashboard and sort of what functionality you have there as well. If I were to, I'm going to go ahead and click and open it from my dashboard in a new tab. And I'll go back to that first slide. Now you'll notice I'm on the same slide in both. The teacher dashboard, though, is actually going to drive or control your actual session. So if I click back to this first slide, it's going to go ahead and take my projector back there as well. And it will also pull my students there. So just a couple of the different functions of the teacher dashboard. We do have all of our slides in a list, so we can go ahead and jump to them out of sequence or use our arrows. We have our show responses button. We can lock screens from here, drop a new prompt in, and we do have our more actions, so we can go ahead and turn on student pace mode at any time as well. If I click show responses from here, well, and also if I navigate, so if I were to jump to the next slide, it's going to jump to the next slide for everyone. But when I click show responses, you'll see a red border shows up around this dashboard. And you'll see now I'm projecting those responses. If I hide those responses, my projector is now hiding those responses as well. So we're operating our projector, and we can do this from a different device. We can do this from a different window. We can do this from like our phone or our tablet to be able to actually control our sessions. You'll notice that now when I look at my student answers, I have my student names, and I have a few options there that I don't necessarily have when looking at it here. I can also open my roster, and I can see which students have joined. If I want to, I can click this more actions button, and I can block a student from a session. If I do that and then I want to let them back in, I can go ahead and just click that button again, and it will allow them back in. So I'll go ahead and block myself. And then I can go ahead and unblock. You'll also notice if I scroll to the bottom of any of my slides that are interactive, I can see which students haven't yet responded at the very bottom here. Now, you'll see all of my responses are on my projector, but if I want to highlight a specific one or two that I really liked, I'll go ahead and I'll click those. When I click that star button and I star those, you'll see that the ones that aren't starred are going to disappear. It's only going to project the ones that I've starred. Again, it's going to show anonymously, so we can give credit to students without putting them on the spot. By the same token, if I want to hide a response, I'll click this more actions button here, and I'll click hide response. And you'll see that, again, that's going to disappear. So I can hide a response that may be inappropriate, or if I just don't want to show it for whatever reason, I can always unhide it as well. I can also provide my students with feedback from here. So if I click on this feedback button, I can provide my students some feedback, and I'll just click send. I can always add more as well. Now on the student side, they're going to see this icon appear at the bottom right. That's going to let them know they have feedback. They'll just click that. They can see my feedback, and they'll be able to add to their initial answer, or they can add another response as well. So I quickly just kind of want to go through, and I want to just look at just what some of the other slide types look like as we're showing responses through our dashboard and what we'll see on our end as a teacher. So for example, our choice slide type, while it's anonymous on our projector, on our dashboard, if I hover over those bars, I'll see which students chose which answer. In our overlay or in our numbers slide type, I'll actually be able to just look at that grid mode or that overlaid mode. Unfortunately, if you hover, you're not going to see those student names. Also notice in the grid mode, we can sort by time, response, or student. Again, we won't be able to see anything for these embedded slides. Again, we have our draw slide here. I can go ahead, I can look, I see my student names. I can provide that feedback, star answers, hide answers, just like I could with my other ones. And lastly, for our draggables, I can hover over any of those draggables and I'll see which student dropped which draggable where. So if I have a student that was really off base and dropped one, totally where it shouldn't have gone. So for example, and it will update in real time. But if I go ahead and hover over it, I'll be able to check in with that specific student just to make sure that they understood the activity or they understood what was being asked of them. And that's what that teacher dashboard is going to look like. I do want to show us a few other things though. So what we're going to look at now is we're going to look at some of our resources. And after that, I'll answer any questions you have and we'll do that survey as well. So resource wise, I'll go to my student mode because I've embedded these in a website slide. We have our Pear Deck templates. We already kind of looked through these, but these are all available for you. We also have PE, art, we have counseling ones, and we continue to kind of roll out new ones. If you scroll to the bottom of that page, if you have any specific templates that you'd like to see, you can go ahead and submit those. We do look at those, we keep track of them, and we do adjust and update as we go. We also have our weekly wonders. So our weekly wonders, every week, we're going to release 3 sets of templates, one geared for elementary school students, one for middle school students, and one for high school students. They're all built around awe-inspiring content that's relevant, content that's topical, and they're ready-made activities, ready-made decks that you can make use of. All you need is to click, and they're available here for you. We also have a collaboration with Newsela. So if you use Newsela in the classroom, if you make use of Newsela articles, we have ready-made decks that go hand in hand with those articles. Again, they're ready-made activities that you can use after you've read those articles. Your students can go through and complete them, but they're all available for you as well. And there's instructions on how to use those templates on that page. So if anyone has any questions, this is just going to be a text slide. Go ahead and type those questions in there. And as they come through, I'll go ahead and I'll answer them. And if you're not a part of this particular session and you don't want to join, feel free to also drop those in the chat as well. I'll check that chat and I'll look as well. I'm going to go ahead and put in student pace mode while we do that, because I do want to go and grab the link for the survey and just post it in the chat just in case somebody doesn't get a chance to do it and you maybe can do it at a later time. Again, this will be very helpful for us. And I'm just dropping that link in the chat. It's just going to take you to a Google form. That's going to be that survey for you. Okay. So what factors would you consider when deciding on Google or PowerPoint? So I will definitely admit that our Google integration is much more immersive than the PowerPoint integration. Most of the features, like the basic features, are very similar. But for example, the template, when we initially went through and we had to download and re-upload, if you're in Google Slides, you're just going to click those templates. It's going to open up a new menu. And then when you click on a specific template, it'll add it directly to your Google Slides. And again, that just has to do with the integration between Google and Microsoft and sort of how those companies work specifically. But there are also other factors. You can add audio to a slide through Google, whereas PowerPoint doesn't have that capability yet. We also have the ability to embed videos into your projector mode by using the Power Up extension. So rather than like an add-on, it's a Google Chrome extension that allows you to play videos through your projector mode. So that's also an option as well. But the teacher dashboard and all of our question types are going to be the same between Microsoft and PowerPoint. So while there are some nuanced differences and the integration is a little bit more immersive with Google, the PowerPoint integration, when you have like just your basic functionalities, is going to be pretty similar. I will admit I would recommend using Google with Pear Deck rather than PowerPoint if I were using it as a teacher, but my schools were always Microsoft schools where we didn't even have access to Google. So if you are in that situation, you're going to be able to use PowerPoint and you're going to be able to make those slides work for your students. I hope that was a good enough answer for you. Do I have any other questions, or does anybody want me to just go back and revisit something? I can certainly, we have 10 more minutes. I can go back and show you any sort of thing that, may have gone too quickly for you. Feel free to let me know. Okay, well, I'm going to hang out for just a few more minutes. If anybody thinks of anything, also, if anybody thinks of anything or any questions that they might have that we haven't addressed, feel free to email us at help@peardeck.com. I'll go ahead and drop that in the chat as well. That's going to be the best place to reach us with feedback, suggestions, additional questions, technical issues you've run into, anything like that. Please feel free to reach out for us. But if nobody else has any questions, thank you so much for being here today. I really do appreciate it. I hope this was helpful. And good luck with everything in the rest of your semesters. Stay safe. Have a great rest of your week and a great weekend. Again, I'll hang out for a few minutes in case anybody ends up having any additional questions. But otherwise, thank you so much.